Conjura had a good spring. We're excited to see him move around. He gives us some pass rush ability. He's done a good job this summer, so anticipating him to make some plays for us.
What are your expectations for Josh Allen?
Well, Josh, he really progressed last year, and he had a good spring. I think he's got to continue to progress, be a productive player for us, be a playmaker.
Mark said that Jordan Jones is a guy that sometimes you need to hold back because he's got so much energy. How do you kind of, as a position coach, how do you handle that on a day-to-day basis?
Every day is a little bit different. I think you just got to temper him. The guy loves the game, and that's something that you want to encourage, but there's times where you want to say, whoa. But I do know this, having coached a lot of different kids, it's a lot easier to say whoa than sick 'em.
Jordan Griffith, what does he mean to your DBs, and talk about his leadership there in the backfield?
Yeah, Jordan, first of all, the thing that's awesome about Jordan is he's a gym rat. He's around the building all the time, whether it be getting extra treatment, extra film study. He works at the game. He's a guy that can play multiple positions for us, and I think just got to keep growing. Training camp's going to be big for him, as it is for all.
Coach, what kind of identity do you see your defense having? Attacking, blitzing, ball?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it starts and stops with getting the ball back, right? And you got to be great on first down. You got to take the ball away, and you got to be great on third down. And then when you get in the red zone, you got to hold them to kicks. And that's, any great defense, at the end of the day, that's what it starts with.
How many successful year for the defensive line look like? Does that include a bunch of sacks and tackles for loss, or is it taking up space?
Yeah, no, I think it's a combination of those things. There's certain calls where, they got to take care of their primary gap, and they may or may not make a play depending on where the ball declares. And then there's times when we call a stun or a pressure, we're calling it to create a negative yardage play. So I think first and foremost, our run defense improves, and if the run defense improves, that's a direct reflection of what's going on up front.
How many linebackers would you like to be able to play during the game?
The days of just being able to sit in there with two inside linebackers and two outside, I think those days are gone. But what I will tell you is you're going to play who's ready to make plays and who's ready to be productive. And that's the great thing about training camp. The next month will really determine who earns the right for reps in a game.
Sitting here today, how many guys do you think might have a chance to earn that right?
I'd say right now you got a solid two deep at both spots with potential of a guy or two more maybe playing. And the thing about it too is so much of special teams is made up with defensive players. So that's another aspect that those guys at that position in particular need to excel in. Excuse me.
What have you seen out of Cash Daniel so far?
Cash is moving around better. I think Coach Ed's done a great job with him this summer. I think he's changing direction a lot better than he was last year. And the thing about Cash is he played a lot as a freshman. And let me tell you, that's not easy to do in the SEC. But I anticipate Cash taking the next step.
You're deep on the outside at linebacker. What do you look for in a guy like Josh Paschal, who has the talent and the athleticism to get involved, but you have to make a choice if you want to play him some or redshirt?
Again, that's the thing, that's a tough question to ask right now before we even put a pad on. Josh certainly has done a lot of great things in the summer, but at the end of the day, that's what training camp's for.
There's obviously been a lot of talk this summer about the quality of Kentucky's interior defensive line. What are your expectations? What will improvement look like?
Well, I think first and foremost is create negative yardage plays, and again in the run defense. I will say this: I think they improved through the spring and the summer. I thought Derek did a good job with them, and Derek's a great technician, and I think they improved on that. And I'll be honest with you, he puts his foot up the rear when he needs it. And as a group, I anticipate them improving throughout training camp and continuing to make leaps forward.
Coach, the thing with Coach Stoops' leadership, is there one leader that everybody looks to on the defense, or is it more of a team?
There's several guys that kind of lead in different roles. Courtney Love is a vocal guy. I think Denzel Ware has really come on and done a nice job for us defensively. Mike Edwards is a guy. And I think you got to be careful having one guy. You want to develop a bunch of leaders and then define their roles and let them go.
Matt, what role do you see for someone like Jacob Hyde, fifth-year senior, not only his role on the field, but maybe in a leadership capacity?
He's another guy that's a worker. It'll be interesting now. There's going to be a battle going on at that nose guard position, and he'll be right in the thick of things.
Do you think it was fair for Greg McElroy to go after Matty Lynn the way he did?
You know what? At the end of the day, I'd like to keep it just on what we're doing now. I control the things you can control, and I can't control Greg McElroy. But at the end of the day, what we can control is in about 2 hours how we're going to go out and practice.
And you talked a lot about the interior D-line. Was the bowl game a little bit of a wake-up call for those guys? The way Georgia Tech kind of gassed in the middle?
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day when we studied ourselves, and Coach Stoops did a great job challenging that group, but when we studied ourselves, we said we have to improve on first and second down, and we got to improve our run defense. Now, yeah, Georgia Tech, with the nature of their offense, it probably exposed us a little bit more. But I think throughout, when you look at the whole season, that's just an area we needed to improve at.
Matt, if he can stay healthy, what will happen to Darius West back?
Well, Darius, first and foremost, he brings a physical presence. He's a guy that likes to mix it up, which is big. And believe it or not, straight line speed, he's one of our faster guys. So just the depth, the physicality, all those things, I look for him to kind of open up a little bit. I think in the spring you saw as the 15 practices went on, he got more comfortable. Because initially you come off an injury like that, there is a time where you're trying to learn to trigger again. So I'm excited to see him with pads on come in a couple days.
Matt, are you going to be on the field or in the boxes here?
Right now in the box.
And this new rule about coaches not being able to get on the field without being penalized. Mark said a lot of the times he was out there, it wasn't just to yell at the refs, but to actually run the defense in and out.
Sure.
How's that going to affect your normal operation?
It won't affect our operation at all. We're just going to have to be more disciplined to do it 5 yards closer to the sideline. The biggest thing that kind of is the biggest temptation always is when there's a TV timeout. I think that's when you're chomping at the bit. They're tired, and we got the restraining line, and I think that'll be the biggest difference right there. That we just got to bring them, like I said, a few yards closer to our sideline.
You guys experimented with putting a bungee cord on Mark?
No, I'll let Coach Stoops answer that.
Back to Griffin. Describe his style of play. Would you consider him to be a shutdown corner? Is he working at that?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the way we play our scheme in this league, everybody's got to be working towards that goal of being a shutdown corner, right? But he's a long, versatile athlete who's a technician, and he tackles.
Can Devontae Robinson get on the field this year, and if so, where?
Devontae?
Yes.
Yeah, I think Devontae, he's in our 2 deep right now, and that kind of, just like the question about how many linebackers you play, you can't just play 4 DBs, 5 when you come in with nickel. Those days are over too. And in particular when it's a hot day and you're playing a tempo team. So Devontae's certainly in the mix, and training camp will really determine his role.
Mark said that there's going to be a lot of different guys going in at nickel. Will he also be thrown in consideration?
He's not one of the guys right now we're repping at nickel, no.
Looking at the last season, there was so much hype and talk about Westry getting faded. Mark said he was a little disappointed overall. They both have said the same thing. This year going into the season, you don't hear as much about them, but what are your kind of expectations for those 2 guys?
I think number one, you want to shut down corner out of both those guys, right? I mean, they got length, they got speed, they got athleticism, and now they're hungry because they kind of just got punched in the mouth a little bit, right? And I think both those guys will rise and respond. They'll answer the bell.
Coach, with Jordan Jones having as much talent, effort, and motor, what are things he can do to get better, and what's that make his ceiling?
Well, just being more disciplined all the time, and he sees it too. And I think at times he can be more downhill, more physical at the point of attack. You know, all of us can improve at our craft, right? And the reality is Jordan had a great year, but he's a second-year starter in the SEC. So there should be a big jump from a first-year starter to a second-year starter. Now, you might not always see it in production because his production was pretty ridiculous as far as tackles, but we'll see it on film.
If Allen is giving you what you want to see, what will you see? What will we see from him, Josh Allen?
You know, you can't put numbers on production because it just doesn't work that way. I think you'll see defensively us improve on the edge and our pass rush improve.
When you talk about production may not dictate, could you see Jordan being more focused for offense and other guys step up in their production because of it?
I mean, certainly when they game plan around him, I'm sure they say that's a guy that makes a bunch of plays and he runs well sideline to sideline. But again, it's so hard to predict production. I mean, you know, that's why you play the game.
Man, Coach talked about perhaps playing Mike Edwards a little bit at nickel. You alluded to this earlier. If you can get somebody to fill it strong. What traits does he have that would make him a good, you know, we've seen him at safety, but what makes him good at nickel?
Sure. The thing about him is he's just really instinctive. And at that nickel position, you got to have some instincts. You got to have some short area quickness. It's a little different than playing any of the other four spots because you're closer to the ball. Things happen faster, right? A lot of those slots that they cover are short area quick guys, and they're covering them with more space outside. And then out of that position, too, you got to be able to blitz. You got to be able to fit in the run game, okay, and you got to be able to play zone coverage. So the nickel position is not an easy position to play, and it does take a knack.
Coach Stoops mentioned kind of hitting the reset button and simplifying some things on defense. What is the benefit of doing that?
First and foremost, making your players play faster, right? Anytime you can do same as teaching, it's easier for kids to learn. And at the end of the day, we're trying to make our kids on Saturday play fast. Play fast, and you hear Coach talk about it all the time. Execute. The more, and that's what training camp's for too, the more you can handle, you can add some, right? But there comes that bubble where eventually the bubble pops. And I think what Coach is talking about is just us trying to package things in a learnable, teachable way.